Sophia Hansen, I first met Sophia on 8/29/12 for a consultation. She happened to be going to secondary school in our geographic area and found me. And obviously very bright, perceptive young lady. And her mother came with her, Dr. Julie Hansen. Sophia was fortunate to have a mother who's a pediatrician and knows how to work her way around the medical system. And Sophia went through the usual ruckus trying to get a diagnosis and was diagnosed with primary lymphedema. So we had several visits. Last saw her as a patient in 2014. She went on to bigger and better things after that, going to college at NYU and so on, and becoming a really well-known author. But she's also been fortunate. She's been able to go to the Lymphedema clinic. She's had three trips there. So she's had the best of all worlds. So it's my privilege to introduce Sophia.
Good morning. When I was asked to speak at this conference over a year ago, I said yes, then promptly forgot about it for 6 months. To be fair, I was going into my senior year at NYU, so I had a lot on my mind. I only started to panic when I got an email saying I was the opening speaker at the ILF. Yikes. I went through 5 or 6 different versions of this opening, trying to be quippy, but I think the best place for me to start is just by introducing myself. My name is Sophia Hansen. I'm an author and recent NYU graduate living and working in Brooklyn. I love boxing, getting fan art of my books, the band 21 Pilots, and Star Wars. I hate cantaloupe and willful ignorance. I'm also a lymphedema patient. My journey with lymphedema started my sophomore year at boarding school when I was 15. You know, I never really liked the word journey. It made everything sound so smooth and idyllic. And at the time, it felt more like a war on my body and mind. My lymphedema manifested one afternoon after cross-country practice. We had been doing speed training on the track when I looked down to find a blip of pain in my left ankle. I looked down to find it swollen to twice its size, and the strangest part was I had not been injured. I racked my brains trying to remember rolling my ankle or landing on it wrong, but I came up with nothing. My ankle had just inexplicably ballooned. The first thing I did when I arrived back at my dorm was text my mom, a pediatrician. She always had answers for me, but this time was different. She asked all the right questions, but my answer was always the same. No. No, I didn't fall. No, I didn't twist it. No, I didn't feel sick. We had no answers, and that reality continued for many months. I saw 6 doctors, was tested for every disease and disorder under the sun, spent a month in a cast over the summer, iced and elevated and rested, and still no one could figure out what was wrong with me or how to help me. I'm sure this is a familiar story for many patients in the audience. All the while, my ankle continued to expand. The pain mounted as the fluid hardened beneath my skin. I struggled to find shoes that fit both my feet. My self-confidence plummeted. Then the sledgehammer came, the diagnosis. Lymphedema praecox. Part of me was relieved. I could finally tack a name to the strange things that had been happening to my body. Then I decided to Google lymphedema. Rookie mistake. The images I saw were unimaginable to my young mind, terrifying. I was told that my condition would likely deteriorate, eventually engulfing my entire leg and perhaps my body. It was almost too much. I imagine some of you are looking at me now thinking, she looks pretty normal. You're right. Besides this sexy compression stocking and a little extra padding around my ankle, I now present as a fully able young woman. The stars, or rather my loved ones, physicians, and biology, aligned to ensure I would lead a relatively normal life. And as long as those 6 months without answers were, the truth is my diagnosis was expedited. My family had access to the best care possible, both here in the States and abroad at the Foley Clinic. I was lucky enough to be under the care of Dr. Joe Feldman in Chicago, who invited me to speak at this conference and without whom I'm sure I would not be in such a good place today. I was also a radically compliant patient, so much so that my therapist told me to chill. There was also the fact that my case just wasn't that severe. In these ways, I am incredibly privileged, and as you can see, the outcome has been quite good. I know all of this now, but when I was 15, sitting on the floor of my room, certain the swelling would continue to worsen and spread, crying over my first and last real pair of high heels, sure that I was about to go from a varsity athlete to being completely disabled. It was hell. Also, this is a very dramatic self-portrait that I made at the time. I was 15, what can I say? I had lost my sense of security, of normalcy. I had lost a sport that I loved, and with it, my community. I became convinced that I was broken, on the verge of being shattered, and that I was unlovable. Who would want to go out with me? A quick Google search would scare away any reasonable person, right? I struggled to find support from my peers and teachers at school. How could I look so normal and yet struggle so much with a disease no one had ever heard of? I sank into a severe depression, one I thought I might never crawl out of. Despite all this, when I sat down to write this speech, I realized I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about. The truth is, lymphedema has become just another part of my daily life. So much life happens between our islands of fear. Day to day, I cope with my lymphedema the way many patients do. I wear my compression garments, I use my pump in the evenings, I wear my tribute to sleep and bandage as needed. In some ways, it has become akin to shaving and washing my hair, though to be fair, neither of those things cause pain and disability when left unattended. I don't want to give you the wrong idea. My lymphedema is not a non-issue. I struggle considerably on hot days. There are places I just can't go and things I just can't do. The swelling in my ankle bones can cause a lot of pain. There have been times it has gotten so bad I can barely walk down the street. Knowing it will likely get worse as I age is a dull and looming ache. I would be lying if I said I never got self-conscious when people stare at my garments, or when strangers helpfully point out that I'm only wearing one sock. So much, all the time. Quite frankly, lymphedema sucks. But it doesn't dominate my mind the way it used to. My life is so much more than just taking care of my defective limb. Since my diagnosis, I've graduated high school and college. I've fallen in love and traveled to the furthest reaches of the world. I've had my heart broken twice. I've published 6 books independently and recently snagged an incredible agent and manager. As I write this, I'm coming off the heels of the concert of my dreams. 21 Pilots, of course. I waited for 12 hours on a sidewalk in Brooklyn with all the other crazy people to make it to the front row. We danced and cried and screamed and sang until our voices were shot, and it was the happiest night of my life. I'll be basking in that glow for a while. And yeah, my leg is sore and more swollen than usual. I had to guard it in the pit at the concert and do MLD on the sidewalk. But what I have learned, and what I am still learning, is that my life does not begin and end with my condition. I can't stop living. I refuse to stop living. And that is how I thrive. There has been pain and trauma, some linked to my lymphedema, some not. And it will always be a part of me. But I get to decide how big a part. Thank you.
Sophie, you can hear this. Not many times you get a standing ovation.
Oh gosh.
Thank
you. Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
What advice do you give to people who are struggling with that? I think a lot of people do struggle with that. So what words of encouragement besides what you've already given can you give?
Can we maybe use the mic?
Hi. What words of encouragement can you give to people that are struggling with lymphedema? I think there's a lot of people out there that struggle to overcome depression or the frustration you're talking about.
I think the first and most important thing is a little counterintuitive, but I think you first have to give yourself space to grieve what you've lost, because it is a loss when even if you're very well controlled like me, it's still a loss of a certain amount of freedom and emotional and physical well-being, and it's still isolating. And I think just as a culture, we kind of try to be, put it out of our minds, like be positive, like you have to be okay all the time. And I think that's wrong, because when you do that, you just force down your emotions and they kind of fester in you, and that doesn't help anybody. So I think first give yourself space to grieve, and then pick yourself up by reminding yourself of the things that you can still do and experience and love, because there are a lot of them. And granted, I say that as the patient who's very well controlled, so there are some things I can do that perhaps other patients can't, but there are still, just the world is so full of so many wonders that we're all privileged to experience, and you can do that with or without a swollen limb or even a swollen body. So.
Sophia, are you still running?
Huh?
Are you still running?
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant like running on time. I was like, so me. I actually, I should have put this in the speech. About a year after my diagnosis, I got back to cross country. And I ended up as team captain my senior year. I don't know why I didn't put that in. I ended up team captain my senior year. Wasn't the fastest, still had some, problems and pain and things like that. But yeah, I continued to do that. And now I find personally, I'm sure a lot of patients can relate to this, staying in good physical shape is like so important for my lymphedema. So I work out a lot. Running a little bit less, but generally working out a lot. Yeah.
Sophia, thank you so much. I was struck by your self-portrait, and I wondered if you were an artist and how you tap into your creativity.
Two things. That picture, it looks like a painting, and I guess it kind of is, but what I actually did was I had an iPad, and I took a self-portrait with a camera and uploaded it, and then basically using a stylus painted over it and added things. I don't know what there are little dots on my cheek. I don't know what I was doing there. I don't know what that's supposed to represent, but I'm definitely more of a writer, but I suppose that's a kind of artist. And as far as how I tap into my creativity, I think two things. I keep having these two-pronged points. Two things. One, I think pain and like suffering can breed artistry. But I also think there's sort of this idea of like the tortured artist, or like, you know, just tormented soul. And like, no, don't live like that. Like, don't do that. So I think art and writing has become sort of a vessel for my pain and also for my joy. As far as how I exactly tap into it, I really don't know. I think it's always been in me since I was just a little kid, and that was just how I expressed myself. So it just came very naturally.
I just want to say one word to your mum.
She's pretty cool.
It's hard being a parent as well. I
Yeah.
can say because I'm a parent of a child with a rare disease as well. And so a tribute to your mum and to your families and to the carers who are here as well. We've actually done a huge piece of work that looked at children, parents and professionals. So have a look at that work because it echoes Sophie's story. And, you know, we need to be working and supporting each other. What a wonderful story, Sophia. Thank you so much.
Oh, of course. And just super quick, Mom, you've been incredible, both as a doctor and a parent, and I'm so lucky to have you and Dad, and I just thank you very much.
You're welcome. We love you.
So now we are also welcome